Welcome back to the Game Collection. I am SuperDerek and Alundra is awesome. Way back in episode 5 of the Game Collection, I talked about LandStalker, an awesome action RPG for the, get this, Sega Genesis. You know, it's been a long time since I reviewed a game for the Sega Genesis. Maybe I should consider making my way back to that console sometime soon. Anyway, why am I talking about LandStalker in a review of Alundra? Well, because simply put, Alundra is LandStalker 2. Sort of. It's complicated. Back in the 90s, there was a company called Climax Entertainment. These guys worked with Camelot Software when making Shining in the Darkness and Shining Force. After these games were done, the two companies split. Camelot went on to make more Shining games, while Climax went on to develop LandStalker, which was released in 1992. After LandStalker was released, a group of people split off and worked on other endeavors in 1994. But we'll get back to them in a minute. In 1995, the remaining members of Climax put together a follow-up to LandStalker called LadyStalker.
Allow me to take over from here, Derek. Yes, that Japan-only sequel was called LadyStalker, Kakko Kara no Chousen, but also known as the Apocalypse Engine. In this game, you play as the titular lady, a woman of privilege who wants to live a life full of adventure and freedom.
Nope, not today, Jimmy.
No, not this again, you son of a...
Maybe some other time.
Anyway, remember that group that split off in 1994? They formed Matrix Software and developed Alundra, which bears a much more striking resemblance to LandStalker than did LadyStalker in both terms of gameplay and design. Because of this, as soon as I booted up Alundra, I was hooked. But that shouldn't be any surprise to anyone who's familiar with the fact that this game was localized by Working Designs, a company renowned for their quality of work. In Alundra, you play as Alundra, an elf who unsurprisingly resembles Nigel to the T. This time around, our hero is a silent protagonist who gets stranded on an island after a shipwreck. He comes to in a town in the midst of a crisis. People's dreams have been plunging their town into utter chaos. Some people have been having crazy nightmares, and things have started to really spiral out of control when those nightmares start to affect reality. As luck would have it, Alundra is a dreamwalker, a clan of elves capable of entering the dreams of others and even perform exorcisms by solving puzzles and defeating monsters within those dreams, or die trying. Speaking of death, there's a lot of that in this game, and because each person in this game was given a distinct and lovable personality by the Working Designs crew, when they go, you really feel the loss. These dark themes reminded me of some of the darkness from Soul Blazer, but brought to life on a new level, something that was much improved over LandStalker. But the improvements don't stop there. Matrix took everything that was great about LandStalker and took it to the next level and fixed everything that wasn't. LandStalker definitely had some tough puzzles, but Alundra's puzzles were more complex and required a lot of planning ahead because of the way that puzzles were nested, interconnected, and often spanning several rooms. LandStalker had some really tough platforming thrown into the mix too, but this could be a frustrating experience of trial and error just to find out what the X, Y, and Z coordinates of platforms were. This was partially due to the gorgeous isometric graphics. Alundra's graphics are a more standard action RPG angle, making some of the platforms easier to intuit, except for times when their positions were deliberately obfuscated as part of a puzzle.
Alundra ain't all puzzles and death though. There's also some really solid combat. So, more death, I guess.
Combat can be really fun and tricky. There aren't a huge variety of enemies, but that's alright. The enemies that do exist are varied enough that they require unique strategies for offing them quickly. For instance, some enemies block far too often. A strategy that I devised for this was to plant a bomb, then lead them into the blast radius for massive damage. Truth be told, this strategy works for most enemies, but it's tricky to pull off due to the small blast radius of the bombs, so you're better off using your swords, wands, or flails for the job. And before I forget to mention it, there's 50 gilded falcons out there to discover, which you can collect in exchange for cool equipment and diamond containers. Speaking of which, fans of LandStalker will be immediately familiar with this game's health meter and, well, just about everything else, really. I'd also like to take a minute to talk about the music in this game.
I don't know a whole lot about music, but I do know that this game just nails it, and that the team was really conscious about their use of silence, which is something that I think a lot of people just tend to overlook in these games.
Sometimes during the dark or eerie moments in the game, the music will fade away, leaving you to the game's sound effects and your own thoughts, ramping up the tension. Since the release of Alundra, Matrix Software has had their hands in a lot of different projects, including Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy titles. But before moving along to these projects, they did give Alundra one more title, Alundra 2, but that's a game for another day. Complete copies of Alundra ought to run you around $40. I was able to grab a copy for around $30 back at the Portland Retro Gaming Expo. Unfortunately, I didn't notice that mine didn't come with a manual until I came home. However, it did come with a very nice fold-out map and foil box art.
If you played LandStalker and liked it, you owe it to yourself to play Alundra. And if you played LandStalker and found something in there that just didn't appeal to you, you still owe it to yourself to play Alundra because they've just improved upon the game in that many ways. Hell, if you haven't even played LandStalker, just go pick up Alundra. It's a good game, and that's why it's got a spot in the game collection.
Hey guys, I'd like to send a special thanks to my buddy Jimmy Hoppa for allowing himself to be the butt end of another gag. If you didn't get the reference, check out our collaborative review of the Grandstream Saga. And while you're at it, go check out his channel, because I personally vouch for his quality of content. Oh, and thanks for watching.